Alrighty, let's see here. I should be live. So I hope we can get some people to join in here. Is it showing me live? Am I live? Let's see what we get here. Yes, I am. There I am. One thing I am not showing as public. Let me see if I can switch this over here. Okay, I am live, and hopefully I'll get a few people that will check on here. If not, you guys can watch this in replay. If you are on, if you do hear me, please send me a thumbs up or something. Let me know my sound's good. Hopefully my mics are working. I always seem to leave something unchecked. Here, coming to you from the Rogue Way home studio. And man, I have got some stuff to talk about today, and I'm probably going to lose some followers. I'm going to lose some friends because I'm going to talk about the topic of guns today. If you've seen recently, then you have seen my post. I shared a live video of the recent shooting at a Texas church. So I've been asked my opinions on it, what I think about it. I didn't make a post, but I'm going to get into some big issues with guns today. I'm going to talk about some stuff, and I'm going to try to explain this. Hey, thanks you guys for checking this out, dropping in. Hey, give me a thumbs up if you guys can hear me. If my sound's good, I'd appreciate you guys letting me know. So we're going to get into guns today. I'm going to talk about some issues. I'm going to try to explain it the best way I can, the way I look at things, the world, violence, crime, guns, the whole thing I'm going to talk about today. But before I get into that, I just want to tell you guys thank you for use both. Jeff Martin's probably on point is where I'm headed with this. So I've taken Jeff that my sound is good, man. Thanks, buddy. So before I get into that stuff, I just want to say, hey, tomorrow is New Year's Eve. I hope that everyone, it's my birthday tomorrow, in case you didn't know it. So I'm hitting the big 43. Honestly, when I was in my 20s, I never thought I would live this long, especially during the Marine Corps years and the contracting years. Just really never thought that I would make it to 30 or 40 or any of that stuff. Well, 30 I did, but not 40. So anyway, I'm glad to see the new year ending. Means I've got another year older, and hopefully this year will be 2020 will be a great year for everyone. So be safe if you celebrate tomorrow night, and be responsible. We live in the age of Ubers. There's no reason whatsoever to be out there drinking and driving. It's just too easy to get a ride. So enjoy your New Year's Eve celebrations and bring it in the new decade, but do it responsibly, do it safe, and be careful out there, whatever you're doing. So happy early New Year's Eve to all. Happy early New Year to everyone. I apologize, I haven't dropped much since I've been home this Christmas season, mainly because I've been sick, and it's even right now I'm kind of fighting a chest deal. So you'll have to kind of bear with me on that. But I did want to get on here today, so you guys didn't have to listen to me on New Year's Eve, because I know you'll have other plans. And I want to talk about the big issue right now, which is, we've talked about our divisive political climate, and obviously every election there's always going to be guns are always going to be an issue. All right, so it's tough to talk to anybody about guns, because either you're completely on one end or completely on the other, and just the two sides just really can't find any middle ground. And I'm not sure, honestly, that I have middle ground on it, but I do have the ability to at least talk about guns and a logical, let's follow this thing all the way to the end. So I'm going to talk about some different topics. But I want to start out with, I'm going to go backwards because you may not have very long to listen to this. You may not want to listen to me talk for a long time. So I'm going to start with a big picture and I'm going to go back. But before I do that, I do need to explain one concept, because I understand there are going to be people listening to this. They probably won't be my friends very long, but they're going to be listening to this, and they may not understand the difference between guns. A gun is a weapon. Okay, weapons have been around, since man discovered violence, and there will always be weapons, and weapons can kill. It just depends on the availability. Any weapon can do massive amounts of damage. You can have any weapon that can do, it can induce mass violence. A knife, a vehicle, anything can be a weapon. In the Marine Corps, we were taught specific classes on weapons of opportunity, how to turn anything into a weapon. If someone has the mindset they're going to turn whatever they have into a weapon, whether it's a vehicle, whether it's a knife, a baseball bat, they're going to put chemicals together and make explosions. I mean, there is absolutely no way to prevent I guess you could say the ability of people to forge weapons and cause mass casualties. So what you're essentially getting into is, which weapons do I focus on when I'm trying to control violence, and how effective is that actually going to be? So I just want to start with the big picture, because this is really what it comes down to. If you're talking about gun control, I don't care at what level you are at, eventually you're going to have to make a decision on whether you want to get rid of guns or not, because that's where that goes. I don't care who you are. You can say that you're not against confiscation of guns. You can say you're not against it, but in all essence, in order to solve problems, you've got to go down a path, and that path is where it leads. And I'm going to give you an example of where that goes. And I'm going to use the drug thing as an example. But what would it take, and let's just pretend for a second that I'm on board with this. Now, first of all, I would tell you that if we lived in a perfect world and all the bad guys and all the tyrants would give up their weapons, and bombs would go away, and nuclear weapons would go away, and everything would go away, and we could live in this great utopia. If that was even possible, then yeah, I mean, I wouldn't have a problem with it. But we're going to talk about that, and the second part is, what is that ever even a possibility? Is that ever going to happen? What happens? How do you turn this world into a world with no weapons? And if it's not going to be a world with no weapons, then who has the right to have the weapons, who does not? And that's really what we get into. So let's just pretend for a second that everyone agreed that in order to solve the gun violence problem in America, that we were going to have to get rid of guns in America. Let's just pretend that was a solution, because that is the end goal of the anti-gun movement. All right, let's just call it for what it is. So what would it take to do that? Well, I would tell you, first thing you're going to have to do is you're going to have to agree that mandatory weapons turn-in of all types is going to have to be established. In other words, all guns are going to be turned in. There is no such thing as as one gun that is any less dangerous than another, if that's the way you look at guns. If you look at guns as being the problem, then whether a gun is non-automatic, whether a gun is semi-automatic, or whether a gun is fully automatic really isn't the issue. Okay, because the premise is that the gun itself is the problem. So once the gun is the problem, then there can be no separation on what type of gun that you're talking about. It doesn't make any sense. I do not believe that guns are the problem. However, I'm going to look at it from that point, and I'm going to explain some things. First, let me explain the difference between the types of guns that I'm talking about. When I say a non-automatic weapon, because this is really important for people to understand, because there is a idea out there among those that don't know much about guns that there are these machine guns floating around. This is what's doing this stuff, that the machine guns are running around and they're just killing people. So we're going to talk about the difference real quick, the difference of types of guns, okay? When I'm talking about a non-automatic weapon, and it's very important if you don't know much about guns to understand this, because I'm not getting technical. I'm breaking this down kindergarten style, guys. So don't hold me to technical nomenclatures and all that kind of stuff. A non-automatic weapon simply for this purpose means that every time I fire a round, I have to eject the casing from that spent round. That round that's been shot, it's going to leave a casing. It's going to leave a container, basically, if you don't know what that means. And I'm going to have to take that container out of that gun, out of the barrel essentially. And I'm going to have to put a new round or a new bullet, all right, with a casing, a new complete round inside the bullet to fire again. Now that can be done a few different ways, all right? It can be done with a pump action. You'll see people in movies with a pump shotgun, all right? Essentially is what's going on there. It could be a breech load, which means the gun basically opens up and you physically, or it manually shoots the casing out and you physically put another round in there, or both. All right, or it can be done a number of other ways. It can be done with a lever. If you don't know much about guns, but you watch cowboy movies and you see the guys with the lever actions where they're shooting and they're doing that lever, that's ejecting a round and pulling another round from an internal magazine, okay, and it's putting another round in there. So those are non-automatic weapons, okay? A bolt gun, all right, what we snipers call a bolt gun, which is simply hunters know, a bolt action rifle. That bolt is grabbing that casing, it's pulling it out, and it's picking up another bullet and it's putting it in a chamber. Those are non-automatic weapons. Those weapons are just as deadly, trust me, from someone who has spent his life behind a precision rifle, from someone who has spent his life teaching those how to fire non-automatic weapons. It's just as deadly as any other weapon if it's put in the hands of a deadly person, or if it's put in the hands of anyone determined to do either to protect life with it or to take life with it. It's going to be just as effective. All right. That's a non-automatic weapon, okay? Like I said, this is not proper nomenclature. I'm just giving this the best way I can explain it. Then you have the most common type of weapon out there, the most common type of firearm out there, which is, a semi-automatic weapon. And what that essentially means, for those that don't understand this, is a semi-automatic weapon is something that when you pull the trigger, it performs that cycle of operations for you. All right, you don't have to reach in and manually or use any type of system to eject the casing. When you pull the trigger, it has a cycle of operations that in one way or another ejects that casing and loads another round. And it will fire one time every time a round is loaded. And a round is loaded one time every time you pull the trigger. That is a semi-automatic weapon. That is not a machine gun. I don't care how the weapon looks. I don't care that it looks just like what you see the Army guys on the movies handling, okay? A deer rifle looks like what you see the sniper guys on the movie handling. It doesn't have to do with the function, it has to do with the person operating it. A lever action, which is a non-automatic weapon, is definitely not, it could never even be confused as a machine gun, is probably responsible for as much carnage in this country as anything. All right, I mean, we're talking about the cavalry guns. We're talking about, I can fire a lever action weapon pretty fast. All right, all I have to do is pull a trigger and rack a lever. So I mean, that's non-automatic. That's not even semi-automatic. That is non-automatic. Okay. So a semi-automatic just means that it's going to perform that cycle of operations. It's going to take the casing out, eject that casing, and put a new. And yes, thank you, Jennifer. An AR does not stand for assault rifle. Okay, and we'll talk about that in a minute. It's an Armalite rifle. It has to do with the specific branding of the gun itself. But that is a semi-automatic weapon. Just means you're going to fire one round, and it's going to cycle another round in there every time you pull the trigger. Then you have an automatic weapon. Okay, automatic weapons are already so restricted; they're basically illegal except with permits. Okay, special permits, guys. So the idea that there are these machine guns around the streets. Look, a machine gun essentially would be something that would require a belt or a large enough magazine. You're talking about the firing rate being so fast that you would have to have a substantial amount of ammunition. Okay, and I'm not talking about a 30-round magazine. I'm talking about belts, 200-round drums, and things like that you see in the military. Because when you pull the trigger, it just keeps cycling as long as the trigger is pulled. That's a fully automatic weapon, and those are not. I mean, they're restricted. They're already illegal. Okay, unless you got specific permits, they're just not out there. You don't go to a gun store and buy automatic guns without special permits. Okay, it just doesn't happen. So that is the case. So what we need to establish, though, is that the attack on gun rights does not have to do with automatic weapons or machine guns. It has to do with guns in general. Okay, because it doesn't matter what type of gun you have, it's going to be deadly if it's put in the hands of someone who intends to harm, just like a vehicle would, just like explosive materials could be easily constructed. Anything is going to be deadly, okay? When you take away the availability of one, you're going to just push people towards something that's just as easily available. You would see this in insurgencies. You see this in war-torn countries. Guys, this is something that's documented. Look into the history of Iraq. Look into the IRA. Look into when someone is determined to conduct violence, they're going to conduct it with any means possible. Okay? So that's what we're talking about. So what would it take? What would it actually take to get rid of guns in America? Now, this is going to shock some of my my liberal friends. Yes, I have liberal friends. I am oddly enough, I consider myself a moderate, but maybe I'm not. I don't know. But I have dear friends on both sides. So this is not an attack on anyone. I'm just going to say this because this is going to be my catch. Okay, this is going to be my hook. If you are anti-gun, you support getting rid of guns, then you should be supporting a wall. Okay? Honestly, and I'll get to that in a second. I know it's crazy. Yeah, you should support a wall if you don't support guns. If you want guns to go away, then you should be supporting a wall. I don't support a wall, and I'm pro-gun. Okay? So, that just shows you how I can have my different opinions. Now, let me explain what I'm talking about here. What would it take to actually get rid of guns in America? Because we have to establish that you're going for all guns eventually. Because if you take away semi-automatic, first of all, fully automatic guns are already off the picture. Fully automatic guns are already off the picture. Those are not doing anything. All right, you take away devices that simulate fully automatic things like bump stocks or whatever. Okay, I get it. But fully automatic weapons are out of the picture. So now we're talking about taking away semi-automatic weapons. That's every other gun that you see. That's every handgun. That's Glocks. That's what police officers carry. That's what every gun is essentially a semi-automatic weapon. Or fires in a similar manner, such as revolvers and things like that. Okay, so those are all guns that's the majority of your guns. Even your hunting rifles, okay? Most people are out there, they may be hunting with bolt actions or lever actions, but there's a lot of semi-automatic hunting going on. So you're essentially taking away all guns. And once those guns are taken, and if you did get rid of all semi-automatic weapons, then and these things start occurring, and for whatever reason that actually changed, and it won't, because don't even get me into the numbers of guns out there, but let's just pretend in a perfect world that somehow semi-automatic, you waved a wand and they were all gone. And now there's only non-automatic weapons out there. Well, they're just going to take the place of that. And then when those are gone, there's going to be machetes and cars and bombs. That's just the nature of violence. That's the nature of evil. So the first thing it would take would be the acknowledgement that you're talking about absolute mandatory turn-ins, military involvement, absolute police involvement. The police would be forced to act. The military would have to be brought in. There would have to be full confiscation of weapons. There has to be, guys. There is no other way. You're saying you want guns to go away. That's the only way you can attempt to make them go away. Is it going to work? No, it's not going to work. And I'm going to explain why it's not going to work in real simple terms. Number one, you're not going to get the guns off the street. You're going to cause civil unrest. You're going to essentially cause a civil war. And number two, you're going to create a huge international black market for guns in the United States. Now, what does that mean? That means that the U.S., by our heritage, we are a gun nation. When you take away the supply, the demand, if you were to take away the supply, and it can't happen, you're not going to get rid of the guns, but if you even wanted to try, it would have to be through gun confiscation. That would be the only way. Now, let's pretend like that worked, and it wouldn't, but let's just pretend like it worked, okay? Then what you would have is the biggest gun market in the world. And who do you think is going to want a part of that gun? You think drugs are a problem? All right, guess what? Every country in the world, China, Russia, anybody out there who wants to destabilize America and also make a ton off the black market is going to enter the gun trade, and they're going to start smuggling guns at the rapid rate into the United States of America. And they're going to do it for two reasons. Number one, they know it's going to continue the civil unrest in America. It's going to continue the Civil War. And number two, they know they can make a lot of money off of it. Now, the only way you could stop that is essentially to secure the borders and build a wall. Do you guys see where I'm going with this? Do you see where this is going? it's like everybody really wants to go the same direction. It's not a conspiracy theory. I'm just using common sense. I'm not saying this is a plan. I'm saying this is the only direction you could go. So what you would end up with is you would end up with an attempt at full gun confiscation, all right? Which means law enforcement agencies would be forced to make decisions on whether they were going to violate the constitutional right of Americans. The National Guard would have to be called up. They would have to decide whether they were going to violate the constitutional rights of Americans. And then everybody else would have to decide, unless there was a constitutional amendment eradicating the Second Amendment. Or, that's probably the proper word, what am I trying? Nullifying the Second Amendment. So, the thing is this... it would cost, number one, you would have to admit that you want all guns gone. And that's, you would have to admit that. Number two, you would have to authorize full confiscation with mandatory turn-ins. Then you would have to build a wall. Yeah, you'd have to secure the borders because you had to prevent the influx of guns that are going to be coming out of Mexico and that are going to be coming from China and Russia and all these nations out there who want to destabilize America and make money off a black market gun trade. And there would be plenty of money to be made if guns were automatically illegal in the United States. They're AK-47s would see a revival like you've never seen. You're talking 3D printing. You're talking M4. I mean, it's the drug war would be nothing. All right, and then and you would have a failed war on drugs if you were able to stabilize that. You would have a failed war on guns because it would work. It would be a bad day. So Lee Pinkett says there will be a huge vacuum when they do this. There will be billions of rounds and no guns. Not everyone uses drugs, but I can name 50 people in 5 counties that don't own guns. So, and that's exactly what I'm talking about. Okay, look at this from a supply and demand on the international market. The United States of America is the highest demand gun market in the world. If that became something illegal in the United States, then every country that wants to undermine it would be the opposite of what the Second Amendment intended. The Second Amendment was intended so that we could protect our country and protect our citizens. This would be opening a door for unrest. It would be inviting civil war. And it would be essentially causing the United States to become weak and open to invasion because we would be so ravaged by what would follow on. It would be for those of us who saw the civil wars in Iraq and have been to other countries and have seen how this plays out. You can make guns illegal all day long in countries that you invade. The guns don't go away. All right, you can spend all your time chasing down weapon caches. They're always going to be there. And these are from countries who really aren't that good at getting them. They don't have the ability and we're talking about something that is, I can't even explain how complicated that would be, but it could never work. All right, so I wanted to get that out of the thing, right out of the gate. I wanted you to understand that this is a direction that you can't even reasonably travel. All right, so let's talk about a world with no firearms. Okay. A world with no firearms, it sounds great in theory. So does a world with no bombs. So does a world with no nuclear weapons. So does a world with no weapons at all. And so does a world with people who wouldn't want to use weapons. But that's exactly the world that you would have to live in for any of this to make any sense. The question becomes, if there's always going to be people who want to harm others or who are willing to harm others in order to serve their own interests, then who has a right to have weapons to protect them and who doesn't? Who should give up weapons first? If I live in a world where I know that the evil men are going to have guns, that tyrants are going to have weapons, and that these people are going to try to harm others, including myself, then who should have to give them up first? Should people who are guaranteed by the U.S. Constitution to be able to protect themselves and their families from either tyrannical forces or people who go into churches and shoot up congregations, should they be the ones to give up their right to carry guns? Because I'm going to tell you something, they already have. No one is out here asking to match the military in firearms. That is a myth. It is a lie. The military uses automatic weapons, machine guns. They use bombs. There's drones. There is absolutely no competition between the guns that are in American homes and the guns that are in U.S. arsenals. That is not the issue here. So they've already given up that. There's no the NRA and the people who support the Second Amendment are not out there marching for belt-fed machine guns. They're not out there marching for 240, 240s and 249 saws, and they're not out there trying to make it legal to have 500-pound bombs and drones, weapon-carrying drones and jets and tanks. None of this stuff is on anybody's agenda. So the idea that there are all these people out there who are trying to build up, I mean, it's just ridiculous, all right? I'm not talking about, I mean, yes, there's going to be fringe groups everywhere, but I'm talking about your Second Amendment advocates, your NRA members. I'm talking about your concealed carries. I'm talking about your everyday gun owners who are now fighting for their rights to possess semi-automatic guns that are just needed to just stay on par with those who want to come into our churches and kill us. And you have people like Biden and God knows who else saying that they're in the wrong for being able to have those guns. We are not talking about military grade weapons, guys. That's not what's on the table here. Again, and I'm going to say this one more time because no one is out there marching for military. No one is trying to stay on par with the military. All right, these military-looking weapons you're seeing, these AR-15s, okay, or these whatever they're called. All right, they are not the same thing as the military. They don't have a 3-round burst capability. They don't have a fully automatic capability. These are not the same weapons. Okay, they essentially work the same as the Glock that I carry, that police officers carry. These are designed for the average everyday person to protect themselves. They are not in any way going to compete with tanks and bombs and drones in the military. That's not what this is about. We're not talking about anti-military militia. We're talking about patriots who love our country, who love our military, who love our police. We're talking about patriots who want to protect our citizens, who want to assist the police, who want to assist our military forces. We have sons and daughters serving. All right, we have brothers and sisters serving. All right, and we're at the point now to where there are political forces trying to pit us against the very things that we believe in. We are patriots. We actually love this country. We love our men and women in uniform. We love our police. We love our citizens. All right, and we are the protectors. Getting rid of that is not going to help you. It's going to create a vacuum of violence. When that man walked into that church, he fired on innocent people, and it was almost immediately gunned down by the good guys. Yeah, I'll say it. He was gunned down by the good guys, and so he should be. Attacking Texas's gun laws, attacking their gun laws would not have changed anything but the ability of the good guys to respond. Now, I want you to think about that. That person would have still walked into that church, and he still would have pulled a gun, and he still would have started shooting people. The only people who possibly would have obeyed any gun laws that Texas would have had certain political influences have their way or get their way would be the people who, in turn, were able to respond and put him down before he could hurt more people. So I ask you again, who should give up the guns first? And don't tell me that the way to get guns off the street and out of violent criminals' hands is to start with the good guys. We have to blanket. It doesn't work. And I just explained that. Rewind this live broadcast, and I'll explain why that doesn't work. Because guns will always come in. Until you decide that you're going to secure the borders, guns are going to come in even from across the borders of other countries. Out of Mexico, they'll come from Russia, they'll come from China. If all things went perfect and you confiscated every gun in America and you took and everyone turned their guns in and this market and the guns were magically gone, then Russia and China are going to produce AK-47s, 3D printers are going to and these guns are going to come back. They're going to flood the streets because now it's a black market. It's the biggest in the world. And you're going to have you think the violence is going on now? You're going to have actual civil war. And it's going to be perpetrated from countries outside. And our military is going to have to secure the borders just to keep that. And essentially, what do you have? You have what you claim you don't want. So the answer is not confiscation of firearms. The answer is not, look, it's just not. I would love to be able to give you a world. I would love to be able to give you a world where you could just paint the violence away. But you can't. Okay? You can't. You have to attack the evil. Blanket punishment doesn't work with good and evil. Blanket punishment does not work when you're talking about good and evil. You are not going to get the result that you want in diminishing evil by blanketing the everyone. It's not going to happen. So a world without firearms is essentially a world without weapons. That's what you're really wanting. Explain to me how we get there and I'll listen. But you take away firearms and you have vehicles. And you take away vehicles, you have bombs, you have knives, you have machetes, you have anything a person wants to pick up. Look, it doesn't have to be a semi-automatic weapon or an automatic weapon or anything when everyone's unarmed. When no one is armed and I can walk into a group, into an office building or whatever, any weapon will cause mass casualties. And that's exactly what will happen. That's what you have seen everywhere else in the world. The best hope is always going to be a good guy with a gun. And that is just that's the honest truth. And I'm going to get to a couple comments here, guys, because I am live and I'm not trying to stay on soapbox. So, Jennifer Rice says, these politicians talk about taking guns away and they're guarded by people with guns. Now, this is a very good point. I have been part of that. I have been one of the ones that have guarded people with guns. I've been the guy that guarded people, and I was the one that had the guns. And that is 100% correct. So the question is those that want to take the guns away, who do they suggest give them up first? They don't want their protection taken away, but they want your protection taken away. So, you know, where where does that lead to? There's only so much the gun right side can give. We already do background checks. We already have given up automatic weapons. We don't possess automatic weapons. We go to concealed weapons permits. I mean, we could privatize some more weapons stuff, our firearm stuff by the companies. There could be more incentives for companies to require training for purchases or whatever. But you're not going to get to a national registration. You're not going to get to these things that you want that lead to what these other things I talk about. It's never going to happen in America. Essentially, what you're asking for is for America to be ripped apart. All right, I don't know what's going on in Virginia right now, but it scares me that's where we're headed. So that's a good point. They are protected by people with guns because they know the danger, because they know that no matter, you can put all the signs and you can make all the laws. You can say, guns aren't going to come in here, but the guns that aren't going to come in there are going to be the guns carried by the good guys, and the guns that are going to come in there are going to be the guns carried by the predators. It's a common sense thing, but it never seems to be. I don't know. We just have to keep saying it over and over again. So I'm going to recap a little bit. I'm going to go the other direction. So if you missed the first part of this is going to be kind of a recap. I'm going to go backwards. Okay. The first thing I want to explain to my friends on the other side is that there are different that a firearm is a weapon. Okay, it's a tool. Okay, a baseball bat is a weapon. Using a baseball game, it's just a tool. Using a crowd of innocent people, it's a weapon. A machete in the jungle is a tool. In a group of crowded people, it's a weapon. A car on the interstate is a tool. All right? Driven through a group of innocent people, it is a weapon. Fertilizer is a tool used on farms. When mixed with certain chemicals, it's Oklahoma City. A firearm is a tool. When used in like any other weapon, it can be a weapon. All right? The question is should I have the ability and access to it to protect people from those who would use it, not as a tool, but as an instrument of evil? Yes, I should, and I will. So, when we talk about weapons, we can start at a rock, and we could go all the way to tractor-trailer rigs with explosives packed in them, to tanks, and to anything else. But what we want to talk about, because we know it's a divisive thing in this country, is guns. So, when we talk about firearms, I'm going to recap by reminding you that there are 3 types of firearms, and only one of them is in question. All right, it seems. An automatic weapon is what we hear. We hear automatic rifles, assault rifles, none of which are true. These are semi-automatic guns, and yes, there is a difference. And yes, all of them could be used to do the same thing if there are unarmed people around. And they could be used just as effectively. A non-automatic weapon, and like I said, these aren't proper terms. These are Casey's break-it-down simple terms. A non-automatic weapon, which is any weapon that you see where in some manner or another you manually put the round in, or with a feature on that weapon, like a pump or a lever action or a bolt action, you manually put a round in the chamber. When it's fired, you pull the trigger, fire it, and then you operate that feature, which ejects the empty casing out, and then it loads another round in there. Or it could be a breech loader, where you physically are taking the ejected case out and putting another one in, or some manner in between. That is a non-automatic weapon. That means one round's fired, then the cycle of operations is basically handled by me in some manner or another, and then I can, my weapon is ready to fire another round. That is a non-automatic weapon. A semi-automatic weapon, which is basically every gun that is out there for the most part. I mean, there are non-automatics, bolt guns, bolt actions, lever actions they're used in hunting and things like that. But for the most part, most people are carrying for protection, hunting, and everything else some type of semi-automatic weapon. And even if they weren't, a non-automatic weapon can be just as deadly and dangerous in the hands of an evil person. Okay, I know, because a bolt action weapon is just as deadly in the hands of a trained protector like myself. I teach this. So taking a semi-automatic gun off the street doesn't all of a sudden make the world a safer place. It just makes the world a safer place for people, evil people who won't obey the laws. It makes their criminal activities and their violence, it's safer for them, not for us, not for you. A semi-automatic weapon is simply any type of weapon, whether it's any type of firearm, that performs that cycle of operations for you every time you pull the trigger. Okay, one time I pull the trigger, a round is fired, a casing is ejected, a round is reloaded, and is ready to fire again. That happens every time I pull the trigger once. Okay, that's semi-automatic weapons. The automatic weapons, which everyone's talking about, they're not on the street, guys. They're already illegal. They're restricted to the point of special permits. They're not out there. In my career in the military, I only carried automatic weapons sometimes when I was a machine gunner, when I carried a belt-fed weapon. Sometimes I had an M4 that had fully automatic capabilities. Most of the time it did not. Most of them were 3-round burst. I had limited experience with fully automatic weapons when I was in the military because I wasn't a machine gunner for the most part. Those are in law enforcement. I've only had a fully automatic weapon once, and that was an MP5, and that was when I was operating with a drug task force on their team. Automatic weapons are already not out there. Okay, an automatic weapon is something that would perform the cycle of operations and keep firing until I release the trigger. That's what you see movies, and you see everyone on the movies has fully automatic weapons. I get it, but that's not reality. That's not reality. So, not auto. Every time I fire the round, I have to do all that work just to get another round in the chamber. Semi-auto, I pull the trigger one time. The machine does the work for me, but it's still only one round fired per time I pull the trigger. And then fully automatic, or automatic, is when I pull the trigger, and as long as I'm holding the trigger down, then it does all the work and keeps firing everything. Those are what people think, most people think is out there and is not out there. But I assure you, if you took away all automatic weapons, which basically is already the case, if you took away semi-automatic weapons, which is pretty much every gun out there, and then you took away the remaining of the non-automatic weapons, first of all, the non-automatic weapons can be just as dangerous, and if not, you're still going to have other things used as weapons, primarily vehicles and bombs. Look at terrorism all across the world, and this is so obvious. So obvious. Violence isn't going anywhere. The only difference is in the countries where bombs are exploding and cars are driving over people, these are the countries where people can't defend themselves with guns. They can't pull out a gun and shoot the guy driving the truck down the alleyway. They can't pull out a gun and shoot the dude with the bomb. They can't take any action because they have no means to take it. And coming from a former police officer, as good as our law enforcement's intentions are, and as well as they are trained, and as the best they can do, they cannot be everywhere at once. Or even more than one place at once, as crazy as it sounds. Per person. So that's what firearms are. The second thing I want to recap is that a world with no firearms is a world with no weapons, and that's just not going to exist. There's going to be weapons. The case is who has the ability to tell you what weapons you can have and what weapons you can't. No one is arguing that we should be running around the street with machine guns and drones with missiles and 500-pound bombs and tanks. There's no one on the guns side that's out there arguing for military grade stuff. Not really. People think we are, but it's not the case. It's not the case. That's already been we have already given that up a long time ago. But like that, you take away the fully automatic weapons, and people are still unhappy with whatever has been done, and it works its way down until no one has anything to protect them from, and it's a slippery slope. Who gives the weapons up first? The bad guys are not, and they're not going to have to. They'll never have to, because they'll always have a means to get them and to produce them and to make them. And when they can't, they'll produce other weapons, and weapons that are even more deadly. Bombs are way more deadly than guns, I'm telling you. And that's going to be your weapon of choice when citizens if citizens were ever actually disarmed. And the last thing I would say is, on that point, to segue in, what would it take to disarm? What would it take for you to get your wish? For citizens to be disarmed and bombs to start going off everywhere, because that's what's next. For trucks to drive down the street and people to have no defense against anything, no deterrent, not even the idea of the deterrent. It would take martial law. It would take gun confiscation. It would take a wall to secure the borders, a real wall all the way around the country, because you would have to stop the influx of black market weapons that would be coming from every country out there that wants to make money off of the huge demand that would be in the United States, and also wants to destabilize our country and throw it into actual civil war so it can possibly even come in and take over. That's what you're dealing. And then if you actually defended our nation against the foreign influence, such as the influx of weapons, if you built a wall, secured the borders, then you would still have to conduct a war on guns like the war on drugs. That would be oh my God, it would be horrible. So, what is the answer? The answer to violence is in our morality. We have to get back to the things that used to make us a moral country. And until we can do that, then yes, we are going to have to protect ourselves. We're going to have to lock our schools down. We're going to have to arm whoever we need to arm, the good guys. Wherever the good guys can be found, we need to arm them so they can protect the innocent. And then we need to teach our children right and wrong again, which we don't do. The age of anything goes has to go. We have to get back to the things that made our country whole, and it has nothing to do with racism or discrimination. It has to do with just right and wrong. It has to do with how we treat people. It's going to take our media. It's going to take our political parties to sit down and talk to each other, and people to be heard and understood. It's going to take something that, quite frankly, we haven't been willing to give, because all we want to do is attack one another. And the more we attack one another with our words, the more it's going to happen in the streets with violence. So the answer begins with these two actually talking to each other about stuff that makes sense. It starts at home with us talking to our children and explaining to them how to be the good guy. There are some great things that have been done by both sides to work towards that, but we're not connecting. I 100% support things like the anti-bullying stuff. I think it's a great thing to be teaching our children. I teach my children this all the time. But there are things that we're not connecting on. And we're going to have to get back to that. We're going to have to stop letting the media and political parties and hating this person because they're this, whether whatever, this politician, but we're going to have to start looking at things in reality. But we can't do that as long as we're being force-fed lies by both sides. Lies are beat by truth, and truth is beat by talking, by us talking it to know one another. I hope that's where we're headed. I wish I was more optimistic about it. Guys, I hope in this next year that we can get to that point. And I challenge you, my New Year's resolution, and I hope yours will be, is to find someone of a different political party, someone who doesn't believe what I believe, who thinks I'm full of crap, and to sit down with them and talk to them and hear their side of the story and try to find common ground. That's my New Year's resolution, to use this podcast, this forum, as a place to where anyone can sit down with me and they can argue their point without feeling like I'm going to attack them or make them feel like an idiot. Or I would hope that they would try not to make me feel that way. That's my New Year's resolution. I want my liberal friends and my friends on the left, I want them to know that they can come to me and that we can break open a bottle of Jameson Black Barrel and we can talk about our differences, and it doesn't have to result in us shooting each other. That's how you get rid of that. But you don't ask us to not to be able to protect our families. And you don't ask us to lay down the tools of our knighthood, the tools of the tools that we have that are designed to protect my family and my friends from the wolves. I don't look at you as a wolf just because you're different than me. I don't look at you as a problem because you disagree with me. I don't teach my children to hate you or to fear you. I teach my children to love. I teach my children to tolerate. I teach my children to be courteous and show people respect, but also be prepared to protect their family and their loved ones and the innocent from the wolves. We need to get, I hope this year we can get to a place where we see each other as Americans again. That's my New Year's resolution. So I'll offer a toast up to you guys because I'm probably not going to see you. So my friend, my good coach, Chad Rourke, my Marine mentor in the close combat arts, he sent me a one mind any weapon sweatshirt from our days as Marine Corps close combat trainers at Camp Lejeune. We were the original one. He was really the original one. I was like the first class of his. And Chad didn't even open this, buddy, but I'm going to open it. And I'm going to toast the first drink of this year. Anyway, this is technically 2019, but this is going to be my toast to Chad. My New Year's resolution to you guys. I hope you have a safe New Year. I hope you have a safe New Year's Eve. I hope you have a great year. And here's a chance to sitting down and talking to those we disagree with, finding common ground, and making 2020 a better year than 2019. God bless you. God bless all those who are serving right now overseas in our communities. You're wearing the uniform, whether it's the American patch on camouflage or whether it's the American patch on black or brown or gray. Whether you are in law enforcement, whether you're on the fire, a rescue, paramedics, military, whatever it is that you're doing during this time while we celebrate, you're out protecting us. We love you. We appreciate you. God bless you. God bless America. And I pray for us all, those on the left and those on the right, and I hope that we can come together, have a toast, talk about our differences, and make the world a better place today than it was yesterday. Cheers, and Happy New Year's.